So thank you very much. It's a real privilege to be having the forum and speaking after Kareem and Martin, who really very well represented their work and the value of water and understanding water and culture. So I've taken on a very daunting task in the few minutes I have, which is talking about the HUL, or Historic Urban Landscape Methodology as applied to India. Why have I done that? I'd like to talk about the relevance of HUL today and ahead, because I think that is our journey. I think what we are trying to do is making the world, not just our professions, but people outside our professions, aware how the solution to a lot of problems related to water that we see today are connected to understanding and learning from our traditional wisdom. And I think HUL plays a very important part here. So I'll speak a little bit about that. So if you look at HUL, it raises, right, it was something that it was a recommendation put together in 2011, which is nearly a decade back, right in the, at the right time, because it's been looked at again. There are a lot of surveys which have happened. There's a post recommendation report, the latest being 2019. You should all look at that. But the most important part of why I think HUL is a tool for looking at water for the future, looking at water and heritage for the future, is that it recognizes the dynamic nature of our urban establishments. That our cities are dynamic, they're changing, they're forever evolving, and we need to understand that. It also looks at integration. So integration of historic urban area conservation, management and planning, strategies of local development and urban planning, and also looking at a landscape approach. So not focusing on the problem, the point problem, but really going out and focusing on the entire landscape to see where the challenge lies and how we can address it. It's very important because it talks about appropriate legislative institutional frameworks. Because today on different forums, we are talking about how frameworks very often don't look at heritage. A lot of legislation for culture and nature is very different. So, it's addressing all these issues. And lastly, I think it focuses a lot on the fact that we have to tie in local with the regional, with the national, and then, the regional at a global level, both authorities and institutions doing work in the sector of water and heritage. So the recommendation addresses the need to better integrate and frame urban heritage conservation strategies within the larger goal of overall sustainable development. Why I've picked on this is that we actually have got into our, particular expertise and silos. And here the HUL approach and the SDG approach are talking about the effort being from the different expertise and silos, but the impact being holistic. And I think we have to really focus on that from now on in this decade of action, this next 10 years decade of action for the SDG, that only if we are looking at a larger approach, which we are talking about the HUL for urban areas or the landscape approach, where we're able to identify, conserve, and manage historic areas within the broader urban contexts. So here you're looking at a heritage site, it's on top of a hillock, but you can see the kind of development around it. And you see that today, anything that we're looking at will need to look at its broader context, because that's where the problem lies. We can't look at just the historic area or the urban area separately. So the idea here being extending beyond the notion of the historic center. Many of us are doing research and projects on the historic centers or ensembles, but here we're looking at the geographical setting, the larger context. And I'm going to be repeating this again and again, because many people who are working with water have to kind of come to a point realizing that water is the best connector between, the historic center and new development, between nature and culture. So the fact that we are establishing an IC on water heritage, I think is going to be the key to solving many, many problems that our other projects and ISCs and NCs are facing. Because water will be the connector. Water will make us understand that we have to understand terrain before we can start solving micro problems. So here, just giving a very quick example from India, where I was working in a historic garden with some senior colleagues many years back, almost 15 years back. And the fact that the garden itself that you see in this very quadrilateral sort of a layout was chosen because of the presence of natural springs. But the development you see on the northwest, where you see, very heavy residential and all sorts of urban development happening, did not realize that this was a land of springs. And the development was so fast and so spread out that the whole understanding of the landscape, that this was a spring landscape, if we had nurtured the springs today, there would be no problem on availability of water and very, very clean, fresh water coming out from the ground. Instead, what we see today, or we saw almost 15 years back, and I'm sure the problem is going to be even more grave today, is that a lot of public institutions are trying to pave these natural spring sources, thinking that it's water which is coming and flooding the areas, the residential areas, not realizing that the residential areas have actually taken on the water footprint. So just taking one small example on this. Another thing the HUL talks about are the challenges and opportunities. So it looks at the fact that, we're looking at history, collective memory, and seeing that the key to actually environmental improvement is going to be once we understand urbanization and globalization. We have to today, today we really, everything that we've been speaking about for the last 10, 15 years is a reality today when we look at the whole pandemic and how we are all connected. So when we're looking at urbanization and globalization, we are understanding that HUL is trying to address these notions which are beyond the site, beyond the landscape. It's trying to address the whole idea of development, but development keeping an understanding of environment as being very central. So again, coming down to the urban landscape approach, understanding how we can manage and mitigate all such impacts, understanding the landscape. So this is a historic area in the south of India. It's a beautiful site. You can see, you can see a little bit of development on the periphery, but it seems quite well looked after, well maintained. But then when you look at the Google image, Google map of this area, you see what kind of development surrounds it. You see the kind of urban reality. So there's almost like we come in and work at the precinct level, the historic precinct level, but we don't realize what is happening around until we don't marry the two, till we don't understand that both are a product of each other, both actually share a symbiotic relationship. Till we keep creating these divides, we will never be able to understand, cater for the water needs, the realities of the community living there or of the historic settlement. It's going to die out, just seeming as something which is defunct, not really having a very wide use.
Thank you, Nupur. Can you round up, please?
Yeah, I will. So HUL also looks at policies, and that's something you can look at. So these are certain urban areas where there are different water structures, and looking at these water structures where new schemes are trying to respect that when you have new water schemes coming up, how we can look at looking at the historic water structures. Various tools of civic engagement, knowledge, regulatory, and financial. So I'd just like to end here, again, reiterating that one reason why HUL should be taken as a serious tool for planning for our future and is because it looks at the larger landscape approach to our development and our cities and will show the way forward to our problems. Thank you very much.